For 30 years and more, Republican terrorists have bombed and shot our people, many of whom were unarmed and unable to protect themselves. Despite all this, we are still here. Ulster is still British, and the Unionist population is still in the majority. But we have only survived the IRA campaign through the providence of God, and not because of our own resilience, ingenuity, or strength. In fact, whilst war has been waged upon us, we have warred with each other.
Does anyone know his politics?
No, but his weight with the commoners could unbalance everything. Obelius will kiss his arse, and so we must.
Sir William! Sir William, inasmuch as you and your captains hail from a region long known to support the Balliol clan, may we invite you to continue your support and uphold our rightful claim?
Damn the Balliol clan!
Gentlemen!
Gentlemen!
Now is the time to declare a king.
Hold! Wait! And you're prepared to recognize our legitimate succession, are you?
You're the ones who won't support the rightful claim.
Those were lies when you first wrote them.
Oh, no, that's true. I demand recognition of these documents.
These documents were lies when you wrote them.
Sir William, where are you going?
We have beaten the English, but they'll come back. Because you won't stand together.
Well, what will you do?
I will invade England and defeat the English on their own ground.
Invade? That's impossible.
Why? Why is that impossible? You're so concerned with squabbling for the scraps from Longshank's table that you've missed your God-given right to something better. There's a difference between us. You think the people of this country exist to provide you with position. I think your position exists to provide those people with freedom.
2012 marks the 100th anniversary of the Ulster Solemn League and Covenant, which we have completely dismissed. Our forebears would be disgusted that we have not done what was promised. Ulster folk undertook to stand by each other and stay united, no matter what was to be ranged against them.
Anyone here been in the army?
Yes. I served with you at Vindabona.
You can help me. Whatever comes out of these gates, we've got a better chance of survival if we work together. Do you understand? If we stay together, we survive.
Pleased to bring you the Legionnaires of Scipio Africana!
Unfortunately, we Unionists don't seem to have realised that the traditional Irish method of warfare was the ambush. One example, known as the 1641 massacre, was a blatant attempt to commit genocide against the Protestant population. Only 48 years later, about 8,000 Protestants died as a direct result of Jacobite forces laying siege to the city of Londonderry. The Easter Rebellion in 1916 graphically illustrates the technique of ambush, when Irish rebels attempted to seize Dublin at a time when Britain and the Empire were engaged in a titanic conflict with Germany and the Austrian Empire. Irish Republicans have exploited the same ambush technique throughout their terrorist campaign in Ulster, and there are numerous examples which demonstrate this point. There is the potential for another ambush with the forces of law and order in Ulster weakened, Republican generals in government, and so-called dissident Republicans who have access to weapons which were supposed to have been decommissioned. We can't keep marching into every ambush. The Orange Order can do so much to unify the Ulster people. The Orange has unrivaled potential to proactively campaign for the benefit of Ulster and to prevent our extinction. In addition, the Orange must evangelise and do more to educate regarding the truths of the Bible. Dear viewer, do not be fooled. This planet has not been brought about by an accident. When has anything ever been created by an explosion? Our increasingly secular society and the new atheists would have us believe it is coincidence that we are at exactly the right distance from the sun. It is just an accident that our sun is unique for sustaining life, and pure chance that the moon can eclipse the sun to cover its exact diameter. Your life is not worthless, and you are not just a collection of chemicals that have arranged themselves. Your conscience and reasoning exist to tell you that we are made in the image of God, and we are incalculably valuable to God. We are so valuable, God sent us His Son. No credible historian would argue Jesus never existed. Admit Jesus is who He said He is. Admit Jesus is God and ask Him to come into your life. Repent for all the bad things you have done and thank God for dying in order to forgive you. There is no point opposing Republicans, only to die and spend eternity with them. Republicans want to annihilate anybody or anything which represents Protestantism, Bible-believing Christianity, pro-Britishness or unionism on this island. If Dublin controlled Ulster directly, Do you really believe Republicans would stop there? After the Free State gained independence, the Protestant population in the South was reduced by 70% within a generation. This change in demographics was a result of incidents such as the Bandon Valley Massacre of Protestants, as portrayed in Cork's Bloody Secret, shown on RTA, as well as the Feathered-on-Sea boycott, portrayed in the movie A Love Divided. In more recent times, Republicans say they want an end to the British presence, but they have never just meant the British Army. The sectarian murders of British Protestants, such as those at Darkley Gospel Hall, where people who were unarmed and singing hymns to God were machine-gunned. The massacre at King's Mills, when 10 Protestant workmen were singled out and then murdered at the side of the road. And we can never forget Enniskillen, when Republicans bombed a remembrance church service. Time does not allow us to go into an analysis of all the evidence or incidents relating to the ethnic cleansing or genocide of Protestants on this island. But before concluding fact number 1, please read the following quote from former IRA man Sean O'Callaghan in his book The Informer.
We were a very small family unit, which is unusual in Ireland, particularly Southern Ireland. But on top of that, we were Protestant. And there's an odd thing in Southern Ireland where, you know, as far as I know, we're Irish. As far as we know, we go back, it's Irish, 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 Irish. And yet you're made to feel like you're not Irish. If you weren't properly Irish, you weren't Catholic. And you felt slightly foreign in your own homeland.
I was very boring.
No, you were excellent. I think that this experience and what I learned might alter my relationship to Ireland, because it just always made me feel slightly, I don't know, just not quite good enough, not quite up to scratch.
Ulster has never been controlled by an independent Irish government south of any of its borders, and Ulster has had a few borders, probably 4 or 5. Professor M. W. Hislinga wrote, "It probably was at the time of the Gaelic conquest that a series of linear earthworks was constructed, which runs discontinuously from the head of Carlingford Lough on the east coast to Donegal Bay in the west. Known locally under different names, these earthworks have the picturesque collective title of the Black Pig's Dyke. An alternative, more suggestive term is the Great Wall of Ulster." Many describe Ulster as just a province of Ireland, yet none of the other provinces seem to have built borders like the Great Wall of Ulster, although there is much to say they did war with one another. Again, Hislinga offers some interesting insight, and I quote, "It is somewhat surprising to an outsider to note that Southern Irish opinion contends that the phrase Ulster must be reserved for the territory of the former English administrative province, and that the boundary of that province, which was entirely an English creation, has become almost sacrosanct in the eyes of nationalists." End quote. Isn't it ironic that Irish nationalists are so keen to broadcast that Ulster is a province of Ireland when this has only ever been stated in English decree? Ulster's boundary was at one time much further south and closer to the Boyne before the birth of Christ. Later, under Gaelic invasions, Ulster's boundary was reduced to the extent that Ulster only consisted of 2 of our modern counties, namely Antrim and Down. Ulster existed in this reduced state between 400 AD and 1400 AD approximately. Heslinga is not the only historian who has written about Ulster's ancient borders. The viewer is invited to read for themselves literature by Ian Adamson, Jonathan Bardon, Richard Hayward, etc. Why can we not do what has been done in Scotland and Wales? Hadrian's Wall in Scotland and King Offa's Dyke in Wales are some of the best loved walking routes. Why can we not turn the remains of our Great Wall of Ulster into a tourist walkway along the Drumlin Belt, with campsites, B&Bs, an interpretive centre, tours, enactments? Wouldn't it be great if we could rebuild a segment of the Great Wall of Ulster just so people can go and see what it might have been like? Republicans insist Ulster Scots history begins with the plantation. The Ulster Scots are not just invaders or colonists, as there had been Ulster Scots on this island long before it was even called Ireland. If Republicans knew their history, they would know the Gaels arrived here sometime later than the Cruithin, who were the original Ulster Scots. The Gaels themselves are invaders. Isn't it strange how the present political situation was so greatly influenced by two Irish nationalists, one of whom is a pro-terrorist revolutionary, and the other a supposedly democratic Irish nationalist? They have obvious planter names. I assume they have a right to remain here. Let us not also forget that unionism is literally as old as the hills, even as old as these rocks. We once had a physical union with the British mainland. For all we know, Finn McCool may even have been the first leader of the Unionist Party. In a sad attempt to provide a historical precedent where Ulster was controlled by the South, some Irish Republicans may be quick to talk about Brian Boru, who they have labelled High King of Ireland. Of course, the name Ireland wasn't even invented when Brian was around, and his title in ancient texts was Imperatum Scotorum, or Emperor of the Scots. Back then, this island was Scotia Major, and it is from the people in ancient Ulster where Scotland gets her name. This is another irony. Why do Republicans mythologise an Irish or Scottish king? Or are they only Republican if the monarch is a Protestant? Again, this raises another important point. The people who see themselves as the modern Irish believe they are not British, even though they are living in the British Isles. They believe their Gaelic roots are different from those of the Scots or Welsh, and they have not been influenced by the waves of invading Celts, Brittani, Cruithin, Normans, Vikings, Anglo-Saxons or Germanic tribes. Recent research in genetics has proved that this view is completely erroneous. Further research by linguists such as Brendan Adams has uncovered that archaic Gaelic, that is, specifically ancient Gaelic, not the language invented by Irish civil servants in the 1920s, is etymologically related to Hebrew and ancient Egyptian. In an entirely different field of study from genetics and linguistics, other scholars have come to the conclusion that the inhabitants of the British Isles are descended from the lost tribes of Israel. Time does not permit us to fully investigate all of the evidence relating to this belief, but let us finish with a quote from the Old Testament. In Psalm 89 we read, "I have made a covenant with my chosen one. I have sworn to David my servant. I will establish your descendants forever and build your throne for all generations." The book Lost Lives factually describes the stories of the men, women and children who died as a result of the Northern Ireland Troubles. It was written by David McKittrick, Seamus Kelters, Brian Feeney and Chris Thornton and was published in 1999. This book caused muted consternation amongst the Papish community due to the facts it contains. With no disrespect to the individuals needlessly murdered, this table details the numbers of those killed and by whom. It is ridiculous that according to recent electoral polls, 1 in 2 Roman Catholics now vote in support of the Sinn Féin IRA movement, when the same movement has killed a quarter of all the Roman Catholics murdered during the Troubles. The point needs to be repeated continually. Republican paramilitaries have been the main aggressors and instigators of violence. Republican paramilitaries account for almost two-thirds of all deaths, Loyalist paramilitaries for less than a third, the British Army for 9%, the RUC for almost 2%, and other groups each for less than 1%. A very important point needs to be made in reference to this book. Nowhere in the book Lost Lives, which details every murder during the Troubles, is a killing attributed to the Orange Order. As far as this book is concerned, the Orange Order is not responsible for one murder throughout more than 30 years of conflict. The Irish Republic has long been dominated by the Papist Church, as represented by this photograph, where the Republic's Prime Minister, Eamon de Valera, shows Cardinal John Charles McQuaid complete obeisance. De Valera's successor as Irish Prime Minister was Sean Lemass, who is supposedly under great influence by Cardinal William Conway. Conway was the man responsible for protecting IRA bomber Father James Chesney, who was implicated for the Claudy bombings. In more recent times, the Irish Army has been ceremonially involved in state-sponsored Roman Catholicism in their carrying of the bones of Saint Teresa of Lisieux. To the present day, the Roman Catholic Church runs 90% of southern Irish primary schools. The decision to withdraw state funding for independent schools in the south is further evidence of the Republic's sectarian bias against Protestants. The Cloyne Report and the Ryan Report show that the Irish government and the Roman Catholic Church may have conspired to cover up child sex abuse. Unfortunately, the Unionist analysis was correct. Home rule is Rome rule. Can we now be confident that the Irish government is no longer lobbied by powerful committees of Papish priests? Time will tell, but dear brethren, let us not gloat over the apparent moral corruption of the Roman Catholic Church. Many children have had their lives ruined, and they have been denied justice. The frightening thing is, the scandal revolving around paedophile priests is only the tip of the iceberg. The Vatican has been involved in many heinous crimes, such as the signing of the Lateran Treaty with Italy's fascist leader Mussolini, the murder and subsequent cover-up of Pope John Paul I, the rat lines which smuggled Nazi war criminals through Vatican City and on to Argentina, as well as the Ambrosiani affair, where the Vatican hired an Italian mafia gangster called Michele Sindona to launder billions of dollars through the Vatican Bank. We have long known that the Roman Catholic Church is theologically corrupt, but such levels of moral corruption are totally reprehensible. We now face a difficult conundrum, in that there may be Irish Catholics who are more willing to hear the true gospel of Jesus Christ than Protestant loyalists who have hardened their hearts. Let us finish with a Bible quote which scholars believe is a call to Roman Catholics. It is found in the book of Revelation, chapter 18, verse 4, and it reads, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues." To conclude, how can we prevent the extinction of the Ulster Scots Protestants? Number one must be the realization that if there is no God, then this is all for nothing. If we believe in God, then we must believe He will do something. Our situation could be completely turned around if we prayed for Ulster, prayed for a revival, and prayed for discernment for our leaders. We know we have been losing the propaganda war, but that doesn't mean we should give up. Promote the Orange and ask our Orange leaders what they are willing to do to educate and evangelize our people. Why do Unionists insist on using the language of our enemies? A united Ireland sounds like a good thing. We should be talking about Dublin control of Ulster, or Irish control of Ulster. Those Unionists who refer to us as just a province, or the North, are annihilating Ulster's ancient status as a kingdom and as a separate entity in its own right. The point has already been made. A segment of the Great Wall of Ulster needs to be rebuilt for future generations, for tourism, and because just campaigning for such a project would totally undermine Republican claims to the whole island for themselves. In everything, from when you write a postal address to when a sports organisation is named, we should be trying to use the word Ulster at every opportunity. In some respects, it was a terrible mistake that this little country of ours was named Northern Ireland. Why should we not campaign to get our real name back? I hope that this video will lead to some discussion in Orange Unionist circles, but please remember,
If we stay together, we survive.